Hi, I'm Steve Jones from Redgate Software and SQL Server Central, and I want to do a quick demo of how the ReadyRoll product works. I was at Build 2016, and I was in a DevOps session. I got the chance to get on stage and do this demo, but it was very quick, and it really didn't explain everything I'd done. So I wanted to take a little more time and go into this a little more detail. Now, ReadyRoll exists as a plugin to Visual Studio. As we can see here, it's actually a project type that I can use. Similar to database projects, but it's a kind of a replacement. It goes beyond database projects and does a little bit more than you might want to do. In this case, you'll see here I've got this My Health Clinic database, which I've already built, and this is a ReadyRoll project, and it's a sub-project to the solution that's got my ASP.NET code and other projects in there. I want to focus on just what I'm doing here with the database project. Now you'll know I've got some tabs. If you have done SSTT, I've got pre and post deployment scripts here, which are kind of generic scripts that are available if I need to do anything else. And then what I've got is a number of these migration scripts here. And what these are, each of these scripts actually contains changes that I'm going to make to a database. And so as I make changes, I build a new script. And you can see I've got 66 of them right now. A number of these are practicing different demo things and then undoing the demo. So I've never done a rollback here, right? You can't really roll back in databases. What I'm actually doing is a roll forward. I make a change if I want to have that change come out of the database, like if I've added a stored procedure and I want to remove it. I create a new migration script to remove that and reset things. So I'm always rolling forward. I know some of you are concerned about the number of scripts here. It's not too big a deal. We can re-baseline and move these scripts around, and that's for another video and another explanation. But for now, let's just look at what we want to do here. Now I've got a development database here on this instance where I've got a number of tables, items, stored procedures, that kind of thing. I also have this QA database here, and what I want to do is as part of my development items, I want to add a column to this dosage table. So there's 4 columns in the development database, and there's 4 columns in the QA database, which is what we expect. We're going to make a change to the development database, and I want to show you how ReadyRoll produces an artifact that gets committed to version control, and then how VSTS actually builds this. So I'm going to come here into the designer and do the kind of normal thing that people always do here, work with either the code or the GUI. In my case, I've actually got some code done that I want to use, and so I'm just going to take this whole statement here and put it in the code window. Now that adds it up here as well to the GUI so that you can work either way, both of them, whichever is more comfortable. And when I hit update here, I'm actually going to get this dialog to generate the change script. Now when I click this, what happens is ReadyRoll actually adds a new migration, and if we look up here in the corner, we'll see this is 67. So it's the next migration script that's added. I'm going to ask to deploy this to my project. I don't need a designer anymore. This script has been added to my project, but I want to deploy it to my database. In this case, it's just going to run a build and deploy in Visual Studio, and this script will actually add the column to this database, this table. So if we look at this table now, come back in here. Apparently that doesn't like refreshing. I refreshed everything. We'll see that there is that column in here as well. Now I can add other items as well. For example, let me add a stored procedure here because I want to just show a couple of things happening. So I can say let's add a new stored procedure, and again I've got some code here that I'm going to use to build this stored procedure. Where are we at? Again, when I click update now, this script will be turned into a migration script, and I can deploy that out to my database again. Right? So as a developer, I can make changes, deploy them, test them here, make sure that things are working with queries or whatever I'm doing, and then at some point I'm going to decide I've finished. In this case, I'm going to say that 67 and 68 are good enough for me. That's enough to commit to version control. So let's go ahead and commit that. Now when I do that, you'll see I've got 67 and 68 as changes here, and I can say new column for. It helps to do this in advance. I can do the normal things I do here. In this case, I'm using TFS online. I can add work items to this commit and do whatever I want. Now I'm working in Git, so I'm working essentially in a repository on my local system, so I want to commit and push this. But before I do that, what I want to do is show you where this is going to go in TeamCity services. Now I've got a build set up here. I've got code actually in place here. If we look at the code window, we'll see that my database is here and my migrations are there, and we'll go down and you'll see that there's 66 of them, not 67 or 68, which are coming. When I do this commit, what's actually going to happen is a new build is going to be kicked off, and it's going to be one of my database builds here that's going to understand what my solution is. And if I look at the definition of this build, this is a continuous integration build. It's just a Visual Studio build, normal type of build that we would expect. In this case, it's taking that full solution, which is the ASP.NET solution with all my projects, and then what I'm going to do here is pass in the /t parameter and just build my database project. So there's nothing special about what's happening here. It's going to perform this build. The way this works is there's actually an agent on this virtual machine that will perform the build. This virtual machine is a VM running in Azure, and it's going to perform the build for me. The agent will actually be triggered. It will know that there's a commit to the repository here. I've got a Git repository, and we want to do a continuous integration build on each check-in. So when this happens, the agent will wake up, it will download the code, it will actually perform the build, and it will produce an artifact. And we'll be able to watch some of that. When I look at all these builds here, these are the previous builds that I've done. We'll see one that gets queued up here when I do this commit. So let's go ahead and do that and push that work out. So that's going to commit. The agent will wake up fairly quickly. I've been surprised at how well this works even on my local machine at home or on my laptop to watch this build. And what we'll see here in just a moment, assuming that I actually committed this, is the build go through. And if I double click this, what it'll actually do is get the console output that the agent sends back to VSTS and can see things happening. So even though the agent is running locally on this machine, this output that I see in my browser is actually being sent up to VSTS. And you can see it's going through the migrations. It determined that there's 2 that are going to be deployed. ReadyRoll works with 2 databases by comparing them, and so it's doing that right now and producing build artifacts that will actually be used to do build and release. Now I have a release set up as well, and we'll look at that in a moment, but I want to look at some of these builds that are taking place once this is done. So you can see that my build is running. I'm getting information up here real time of what's going on. Once this build is complete, we'll actually see a little more information here. An artifact will be produced, and so the build is complete and that artifact just popped up. You can see I've got the work item and other things here. I have a little preview. This is an add-in that Redgate has built so that we see kind of what's going to be pending to deploy. When I look at the artifacts, I actually have a package here, which I can download. You can download and look at it. It's got my reports in it. The PowerShell file is actually what manages the deployment. The SQL contains the code that is going to be deployed. And then there's just summary information and metadata in there as well. We also produce a diff report here. In this case, we at a high level give you a compare report where we can see that this table changed, this stored procedure is new, and then I can go down and look at the code if I want. So at a high level for every build, I can see what's happening. I can also look at the script as well if I want to go through here and see this. And what I'll actually see is that there's my pre-descript. Here is the alter for that table. And then here is the stored procedure being created. And that's all I'm doing in this case. Very simple. Let me jump over to the release side of things. The release is the way that we actually get these changes out to another database. And in this case, if I want to look at the definition, Redgate has some ReadyRoll tasks here that we've added to our the Visual Studio Marketplace. And in this case, this deploy package is what will actually take that artifact from build and it will go to this instance, which happens to be on this machine, to this database, my QA database, and it will deploy that package. It will deploy the changes to the database. This gives me a place where we can see all the integrated code from all developers all together. Now we also have a task that will run tsqlt tests, so we've got unit tests in place, and matter of fact, I have a number of unit tests here in this database. Again, this instance and my QA database is where we're going to run these tests. And I could do other things. I've got other tasks in here that we added for the demo, but really the point is that we're pushing these off. Now for my QA task, this is triggered automatically. So what happens here is that this deployment goes after release creation. It just runs automatically. I have staging and production. In these cases, there's an approver actually added that would have to approve this to be released. And you'll notice we're not doing testing here. We're just doing this release. And then we haven't configured the deployment conditions here. So we don't do these in general because we have approvals listed. But we could have these set up to go automatically if we wanted to after approval. Now let's look at the release that just ran. We'll see here my latest release actually failed for some reason. We'll look at this 3 minutes ago. If we look at the details of what's going on, something has changed here for sure, but I see the same information that I've got here. My diff report again is here, my scripts are here where I've got my alter in there, and then in my log I can actually see what went wrong, and in this case we probably, I think we changed the package for the demo somehow, and now it's not working. Oh, the Azure package didn't work. That's what's going on. The database package worked and the Azure package did not work. So, and I can see that here, right? And I should have been looking. We added these tasks for the demo, but we're not actually deploying the web application here because we didn't configure this correctly. So the database part worked, these first few tasks. The web part did not work. So, that happens. That's also why my test results didn't appear here, because the web app failed. However, if I go back to Visual Studio and my Object Explorer, and let's go look at that QA database, what we should see is there is in fact that new stored procedure there, that get dosage by medication, and there it is. And if we look at my table, what we'll see is that we've actually added that column to the QA database automatically through our build and release pipeline here to another test environment, in this case our QA environment. We've managed to put that thing through. And this is made possible by ReadyRoll. That ReadyRoll is it's in the marketplace. There are tasks available here that we can install and download for Team Foundation Server or Visual Studio Team Services Online. And then ReadyRoll actually is this product that is available to help you build and work with your databases in Visual Studio the same way you work with all the other code. You commit it, you build it, you work with it just like any other Visual Studio project. Hopefully this has helped you understand better what ReadyRoll does for you. I'd encourage you to go to redgate.com and look at the ReadyRoll product, download it, and give it a try. I think you'd find it's a great way to build and release database code. I'm Steve Jones for Redgate Software and SQL Server Central.